I'm from the year 6491.
This man claims to be from the year 6491. We sat down for an interview in an undisclosed location as he told us his story. He claims to be from another galaxy and he is currently stuck in the year 2018. Watch this and decide for yourself.
My name is James Oliver. I'm from a planetary system that is not this one. I'm sorry, I'm being very vague. I can't be specific. It's company procedure. I work for an organization, and again, I cannot disclose the name of this organization. It's against policy. But essentially, what I am is I'm sort of like an archaeologist. You know, you go back through time, and I'm looking through clues from the past, and I'm a field analyst. I study the different time periods. I study different cultures, and I've happened to end up in this one. It's a bit of a tragic story, actually, if you want to hear about that. So essentially, the way the whole time travel thing works, at least where I'm from, is essentially particle accelerators. I don't know if you know what those are, but it's essentially what you lot have at this moment in time is this big circle of this very reinforced pipe, and they take singular atoms and they accelerate them to near light speed and smash them together at extremely high velocity, and it releases a lot of energy. And what we've managed to do is create a particle accelerator that is a lot smaller, a lot more portable, and also our particles go faster than the speed of light. And what this means is when they collide, we generate nuclear fission, which is the driving force behind stars. And it is the only process that can create more energy than what you start out with. And you can actually do your own research on this subject. It's fascinating, and I'm not, an expert in that field, but that's essentially the gist of it. It's a very interesting subject, though, and if you are interested, I do highly recommend that you check it out. But the way our starships work is that, and this is, by the way, how I travel between time periods. I'll get more on that in a moment. We've taken this particle accelerator and we've made it a lot smaller so it can fit on a single-seater craft. And that is what powers our engine. It creates exponential amounts of power. We actually have so much that if we were to just funnel it directly into the main engine, we'd burn the engine up and the entire craft would incinerate at a greater temperature than a supernova, which is an exploding star. So you can imagine that would be pretty bad. So what we actually have to do is we have to vent some of this energy into space. However, we've also developed a quantum drive, which is manufactured from synthetic fibers that are much stronger than any naturally occurring material in the universe. And we are able to funnel all of that energy in a straight vector, and this allows us to reach incredible speeds. We're talking several times faster than the speed of light. And here's the part where it gets interesting. You see, if you're traveling between the speed of light and twice the speed of light, you will actually start heading forward in time. And if you are able to surpass double light speed, you'll be traveling back in time. And this is how we as explorers and researchers get around the galaxy quickly and to different time periods. And so I've been at several major events throughout your history. I specialize in the solar system. There's several other agents working here as well. So what actually happened to my craft is that on January 31st of this year, when the super blue blood moon happened, it interrupted a transmission that I was receiving from headquarters. It was a simple software update for my ship, but what had happened was the geological event had disrupted the signal somehow, and I got back channels flooding into my system from outside sources, and it essentially fried the operating system of my ship, which means that I am stuck here until another research team lands on this planet, and I'm not privileged to that information, so I could be here a few more days, I could be here a few more years, decades, centuries, I really don't know. I haven't gone much into the future from here, although I know you guys are interested to hear what year I'm from, and that's an interesting story because my planet and Earth, of course, are not on the same, do not have the same orbit pattern around their respective suns. So you lot have 365 days in a year. Mine's a bit different than that. It just has to do with the fact that my planet is further away from my sun than yours is. It's not a big deal, but it does make it hard to try to figure out which year I'm actually in on Earth. Thankfully, there are some equations and calculations out there that can help me with that. And I have completed these, and the year that I'm from in relation to your version of measuring time, I'd be from the year 6491. So quite a ways out, and I have not quite reached that point in time from my studies. The way we do things is we go back to the formation of the planet, and we start working our way up. Sometimes there's jumps here and there. It's the destination that we're jumping to is not always perfect. So I could land 100 years, it's usually between 100 and 500 years, give or take, plus or minus. So I've been several hundred years into the future from here, several hundred years into the past, and then all the way back to when the planet was formed. So I do have quite a lot of insight into what has happened and what is going to happen in the next few hundred years. But the fact that I'm stuck here is it's a bit of a bummer, really, and all of my scanning equipment is run from our ship, and obviously I don't have use of it at this moment, so really I can't even be working, and that's why I joined up with this in the first place. You know, I'm curious as to what has happened with other worlds throughout space and time, and I can't even do what I wished I would do. And so I'm just sitting here, I'm along for the ride until somebody else comes to find me. There is a procedure in place for this sort of thing. We transmit monthly back to HQ with status updates, and so when, you know, the 31st of, I guess it'd be your months confuse me. See, February has 28 days in it. And then some months have 30, some have 31. Who designed this system? It is dumb. It makes it hard for anyone. I mean, I'm sure for you lot it makes perfect sense, but for me, I can't wrap my head around it. So it'd be we update monthly, and our months are just 30 days. I don't know why you guys have to, you know, spike it around the place. You know, that's a rant for another time, but essentially what that would mean is my software update was taking place on the 31st, so 30 days from that. The 3rd of, is March? Yes, March is after April for you guys. We have, since our planet orbit is further away from our sun, our orbit time is longer, we actually have 15 months in a year. So it's tough for me to remember sometimes. But yes, on the 3rd of March, HQ should receive an update from me, which obviously they won't get. And we always make those update deadlines, so they'll know something is amiss right away. But as I said before, it's hard to land in the specific time spot. So a rescue operation is going to prove difficult. So while they'll know that there's something wrong a month from now, it won't necessarily mean help will be able to reach me, you know, soon after that. It might take a considerable amount of time, which is why I really don't know how long I'm going to be here. It's a depressing thought, really. I'm stranded here. You know, my family is all back home. I don't know anyone from here, and it's like if you were to move to an entirely different country. I mean, it's worse than this, but just imagine it for a second. If you bought a one-way ticket to another country, and The next day, all borders on the earth were shut down. You were trapped in this country, you knew nobody, and you couldn't find your way back home. It's kind of what it's like. It's upsetting. I mean, I hope I'm not making some of you cry. Like, I don't want to impose my emotional stress upon you guys, but it's rough, man. It's a tough beat. So I mentioned this before. If you're traveling at between the speed of light and twice the speed of light, you're actually going forward in time. I know you guys have those molecular clocks, and you've done those experiments before, so you know what I'm talking about. And then if you go faster than twice the speed of light, you're traveling back in time. And the way I said before, the particle accelerator in combination with the synthetic nozzle allows us to reach those kind of speeds quite easily. It also provides for very easy interstellar travel, so we can get across the galaxy as quickly as possible, as well as traveling in time. Yes, we have an entire citadel on one of so we have, our country is one large landmass, and it's divided into several sectors, and one of the sectors is where my organization is. Again, I can't be specific, it's against policy, but it's where my organization operates, and at headquarters we have several different citadels, data towers, full of, it's just cram-packed full of data of everything. We have an entire citadel devoted to alien and extraterrestrial information, and that's a different type of agent. It's not what I am. I'm a planetary researcher. But we do have agents who specialize in tracking down alien life forms and studying them. Surprisingly, yes. It depends on the species. If you can think about what you guys have here. You have the human being, which is obviously a very intelligent species, and then you can go down to something as simple as a single-cell bacteria. So there's varying grades of intelligence, and it's the same for alien life forms. So some are geniuses, some are dumb as a box of rocks, as believe the saying goes. It really just depends. Well, you see, this is actually something one of the things I was here to warn you about is I noticed several points throughout history, you've had your leaders throughout the world making decisions just that seem like impulse decisions, but end up being the right, or the choice that would lead you away from harm. I would be very cautious about the Yellowstone volcano. I mean, as all of you know, it's overdue by about, I believe it's 600,000 years, and an eruption that size would devastate the entire United States. And the biggest issue with an eruption like this is it will release a massive amount of ash into the atmosphere, and the way your transportation mechanisms work, if you were to try to, say, drive or fly through one of these ash storms, your engines would be ruined. So there'd be no air travel the second Yellowstone erupts. Now, there's obviously what we call, or I can't tell you what we call them, it's classified, but if you've all ever seen the movie The Adjustment Bureau, now I know I'm bored, so I've started watching movie. I can't work, so I gotta find something to do. If you've ever seen that movie before, there's a whole plot point about ripples, and the Adjustment Bureau, when they're trying to mess with society, they cannot do things that will change the course of history. They call those ripples, and I have to be very careful that I don't generate any. But not everybody's as careful as me, so ripples have been generated and will be generated. So keeping in mind what I'm going to tell you is likely, but it's not guaranteed. But with something like the Yellowstone eruption, if you were to have that amount of ash, the second an airport gets covered in that, it's going to shut down because it's not safe to fly. So if Yellowstone were to erupt, you need to get yourself to an airport as fast as possible, and you need to leave the country. And I know that's hard, but it's better than being stuck here. And scientists have estimated that it will take about 5 years for the ash to dissipate at minimum. That's a big problem, because you can't grow anything. So essentially, the whole country would be dead for 5 years, and that's not even counting how long it'll take for the soil to become fertile again. So there'd be no more United States. That's the part I can't really tell you because of ripples and whatnot, but I can tell you it will happen, and it'll be within the next 200 years, for sure. So again, unless you can come up with a way, I know you've all been thinking about ways to stop the eruption from happening, and I've even heard stories about detonating nuclear weapons to try to break up the rocks and distribute the pressure. You have to come up with something like that. You have to come up with some solution to this problem, because it is an active volcano and it will erupt, and the death toll will be catastrophic. So unless you can't, if you can't find a way to fix it, you have to have an escape plan, because you won't. If you can't manually stop it, it will happen, and it will happen within the next several hundred years.
You know a lot about Earth in the future. Can you tell us about what are our biggest threats? Is global warming a major issue?
Global warming, yes, I can't speak to that. And here's another thing I'd like to speak about. Your views. You all seem to be so either one side or the other, and it's like you're either hardcore. It's like it's a warming period in the Earth's history. It's always happened, and that's what's going on. That's why temperatures are rising. Or you're hardcore saying, no, that stuff's not true. It's just carbon emissions. It's depletion of the ozone layer. Guys, you live on. You're capable of talking this stuff out. I can tell you, it's both of them. It's equally both of them. You are in a warming period right now, and your carbon emissions are destroying the atmosphere. So, to an extent, yes, man-made global warming is a problem, and it's not the whole problem, but it is a big part of the problem. And if you were to, put regulations in place to stop that, you'd have more success than you have in the future that I've seen. Oh yeah, that's a fun one. So. I know you've seen. I don't know if some of you know what a 4D theater is, but essentially you have them now where there's interactive parts of the seat that will enhance your experience. Well, in the future you have these. The cinema does not actually have a screen. Instead, what happens is there are these pods. You get into these pods, and there's a little there's some nodes that attach to your nervous system, and essentially it puts you into a daydream, and you end up seeing the movie is like, rather than seeing it, it's like imported into your brain. And the cool part about that is that you now feel everything that's going on. So like, say it's raining in the movie. Well, since the screen is tapped into your nervous system, then you'll actually be feeling rainfall on your skin. Or say it's very windy, it'll feel very windy. Or it's hot, it'll feel very hot. And all the voices, all the sound quality, all the visuals will look so much better because it's transmitted directly into your nervous system, and you're not just witnessing it. It also feels a lot more immersive, like you guys, you know IMAX is. It's like that on a much larger scale. You really feel like you're more of a part of the film, and it's quite interesting. Now, on top of that, if we're talking about entertainment, of course we have to talk about video games, because I know you lot are big into that sort of thing. It's the same sort of deal. It's a chair that will tap into your nervous system, and it starts to, show you things. And if I talk about ripples, and I talk about things that, agents like myself have slipped over the years, here's an excellent example. If I'm talking about this chair that taps into your nervous system and allows you to see things and feel things, if any of you have ever played the game Assassin's Creed, that's a big part of the game, and it's the chair is called the Animus. Well, that idea actually comes from a ripple that was created by an agent, what would be where I am a couple of decades ago. So he gave this idea to somebody at a development studio at Ubisoft, just caused a ripple, and that ripple, this developer came up with this idea, and it's the weird thing is, you don't ever remember this, so you feel like it's an original idea. Now that sounds familiar too. You've seen the movie Inception, so you see what I'm talking about as these ripples and these sorts of things that influence your society, but you don't really think they are. because the second we're gone, we're gone from memory, because it's like we were never even that. But anyways, what I was talking about with video games is when you're in this chair that is attached to your nervous system, you can actually control your character with your brain, and you feel like you are that character, and it's very cool. And if any of you are sitting there, clicking on your little joystick saying, "Oh, I'm better at Call of Duty than you," if you're one of those people who thinks that, "Oh well, you can play that well in video games, but how are you in real life?" So we can settle it there. We can settle that easily. So now you're actually controlling your character. There's no mouse pad. There's no joystick. So that all bets are off. It's actual skill. And that's going to offend a lot of you, saying, "What do you mean? Pushing sticks around and pressing buttons takes skill." And yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but pushing a stick is not the same as holding a rifle. It's different, but it's all immersive. In the future, it's 100% immersive. It's not, you're not staring at screens, anything like that. Another thing I'd like to talk about is your cell phone technology, because that's cool too. And what that is so that doesn't tap into your nervous system because it's too small. For your cinema you have these big pods, and for your gaming you have this big chair that you have in your gaming room, which by the way is like it's super thick. It's I don't know if you have it's like what really can I describe it? It's like the size of an entire sofa. It's big. So you can't have stuff like that that fits in your pocket. So obviously your phone doesn't do things like this. Your mobile games are still the same. It's just touchscreen and whatnot. But the cool thing is it's like these two little pieces of synthetic material, and you spread them apart, and it's this tiny little thing. It's about the size of like a large marker, and it fits in your pocket. And when you pull it out, you spread it open, and it's a material that has it's like glass, but it's got this interesting property where it's got a temperature level where it's very malleable, and then you bring the temperature just even lower and it freezes solid. And when it's malleable, it's still a solid material, it's just not thick. So when it's inside these little two pieces, it's coiled up because it's warmer. And then when you expand it, the two pieces will freeze the material and it stays in place. So then it becomes like glass. And then the two pieces on the top and the bottom, they have it's like almost a holographic projection. It's like these tiny little projectors that are tuned very carefully to place pixels on the glass. And then there are sensors with those projectors that can map exactly where your finger is going on the glass. So the glass is not touch sensitive, it's the pieces on the top and the bottom. There's motion sensors that can detect where your finger is. But it's very interesting stuff. It's very cool. And I can't wait to see what your guys' reaction is going to be when that stuff comes out, because I find it interesting, and my technology has surpassed even that. But it's some neat stuff. You guys have got a cool future coming up, and I can't wait to see how you all react to it. Yes, they do, but the problem with everybody living on a singular planet is you get to a point where the planet has become so populated that it's actually not possible to support that many people. So what has actually happened is you've set up habitats on various other planets in the solar system, like Mars or your moon or Mercury or Venus. And I know you're thinking Mercury and Venus, that it's not able to live on there. But what you've done is you've created this whole interior facility. It's like this big dome almost that's constructed on the surface, and it's hundreds and hundreds of miles wide. It feels like it's an entire continent, but what's actually happening is it's just this big habitat that's encased in a glass fishbowl, and it's pumped full of atmospheric compositions of gases, and so it feels like you're on the same planet, but you're really not. And it's a sort of a way to feel like home without it actually being the same place. And then to travel from place to place, there are it's similar to the way you guys have jet airliners right now. It's just little shuttles. You buy a ticket and you board the aircraft, and takes you to wherever you want. If you have an excessive amount of money, you can own your own. Like myself, I work for an agency and they supply me with one for research purposes. But other than that, land vehicles still exist, although this is cool too. They use electromagnets that react with the crust of the planet, and so it actually hovers. And what that does is there's no friction, and so you're able to go much faster. So when you do have land transportation, it's much faster, it's much more efficient. It's hydrogen powered actually, which I know you guys are working on right now. Trust me, continue down that path. It's what everyone does in the future. So that's a fascinating subject. Short answer is yes, they do. The way it works is there's a chip embedded in your wrist when you're born, and it's like your social security number, for instance. It's an identification that contains all of your personal information. It's encrypted in 16 different enigmas, and those enigmas are different for every person. It's a hacker's nightmare right there. And what happens is your bank accounts are all tied to that, and there are these kiosks, and you put your hand in the kiosk, it scans the chip, it decrypts the enigmas, and it sees your personal information, and then it allows you to access your bank account, and so you can move money around that way. And yes, intergalactic transactions do happen. Say like you're ordering something from just an example you would understand. You're ordering something from Amazon, but it's a whole other galaxy away. That's perfectly fine. You transfer them your money with your little wrist ID. It goes into their bank account. Everybody has one in their home. It's government issued. So every morning you stick your hand in it and it updates your bank account and it updates all your information. And there's a digital assistant that will read out to you and will explain to you what's happened to your transactions over the course of the last 24 hours, any updates that may have happened, any things you need to check out, like maybe your balance is low, or you need to go see a personal banker about something. It'll inform you about that. As for paper currency, it's not used anymore because it's too easy to fabricate, and the coins that you use are gone as well. The new kinds of coins are made from a specific material where you can program magnetic properties, which sounds really far-fetched and hard to believe. I don't even understand how it works. But essentially, all of these coins have a serial number, which is again encrypted with several different enigmas. And the serial number relates directly to the magnetic properties. And so when you're putting this coin in a kiosk, it's going to read the serial number, it's going to read the magnetic properties, and if they don't match up, the coin is counterfeit. And they have coins for all different manners of price points. You have bills that range from $1 to $100. It's the same idea, but instead of paper currency, it's coins, and these coins are razor thin. They're like the size of a couple of sheets of paper put together, and you can just you keep them in this little. It's a little foldable. It's like a wallet, but it's metal, and it sticks to the inside with the magnetic properties and whatnot. It's got little different sections for each of the different value of coins, and it's like those stacks of poker chips where the same color of poker chip is in the same hole. It's that kind of idea. You just carry that around with you. But currency it's a big deal because I know you guys have a lot of problems right now with frauds and counterfeit currency and stuff like that. So in the future, you do take drastic steps to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen, and everybody has the amount of money that they're supposed to have and whatnot. And so it's an interesting subject, it really is.
Does one government control this whole intergalactic?
Yes and no. It's there's a federation that is responsible for all human life throughout the galaxy. But the actual laws that they have are very limited. It's a very thin form of government, and then each individual world has the rights to establish their own government. And if the Federation deems it necessary, they can make adjustments if, say, basically if there are human rights violations, or if there's something that's just not right that's going on. The Federation has the right to correct it. But for the most part, the individual worlds are left to govern themselves, and it allows the people a degree of freedom, and it makes for quite a galaxy that is intertwined with harmony, and because everybody feels like they're independent, and so nobody feels controlled. It's very easygoing. It's all lax. It's all just, it's all sunny days at the beach.
What do you say to all the skeptics out there that aren't going to believe what you're saying?
Well, I feel like I've provided substantial evidence to support my claims, but if you're still skeptical, I mean, I feel like it's my responsibility with the position I'm in to inform you about what you need to know and ward you off for doing things you shouldn't do. It's like I'm the parent, really. I'm the one who's guiding the child. The child doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he or she is going to see in the world when they grow up. It's my responsibility to hold your hand and guide you through whatever it is that's going on. So if it's just, you're entitled to your opinion, but I mean, if sometimes you gotta just believe, man. I'm here to help you.
And we appreciate that. So is there anything else really pressing that you think we in 2018 should know?
I would say be careful of blind anger. And I can't really elaborate much on that because that may create a ripple too large, and we have rules against that.
By ripple, do you mean paradox?
In essence, yes. I mean a ripple is something that we define as changing the course of reality. So something that would impact the world to which I'm from, so that if I remember the past, when I travel back, if the past has changed, we've created a ripple too large and we've violated galactic law. But I can't be very specific other than to tell you that some people are just, it's human nature to assume a group of people is all the same. Like, I know right now there's conflicts between the United States and North Korea, and I'd like to remind you that it's not really a conflict between the United States and North Korea. It's a conflict between the government of the United States and the government of North Korea. And I think that's an important distinction to make, is you're not country versus country, you're leader versus leader. It's all conflicts of humans, it's not a conflict of a nationality. And I think that's very important, and if you'd accept that, then that would be the end of racism, actually. If you just see it as being a conflict between certain people rather than between nationalities, social prejudice goes out the window. It's an easy solution, and you're getting closer, but it's still there. So I would like to make sure you're doing the best you can to, treat everybody as their individual person and not really judge them as to what the government is doing, because I know that's a big problem in the world right now.
Yeah, and being from the year 6194, how do you know so much about Earth?
It's 6491, sorry. It's my job. It's research. It's like a historian, like I was telling you at the beginning. I catalogue the different stages of the development of this world, and it all goes into data files, and they're all placed in the citadels and the information sector.
One last thing, can you tell us about artificial intelligence in the future?
Oh boy, that's one of my favorite subjects right there. I could have a whole conversation just about this, but essentially, yes, we do have artificial intelligence, and it's all very cool. And I know I'm used to being able to, essentially what it is I'll get back to this rant I was about to do in a moment. But what it is, it's a digital assistant that helps you throughout your day-to-day basis. It's connected to your household, it's connected to your phone, it's connected to virtually everything. And it's a personality. And it's a personality that, you can create and
Is it conscious?
It can be. There are regulations in place to make sure that, private citizens can't make it conscious, because, you get people who are irresponsible. You don't let the accountant handle the nuclear waste, if you know what I mean. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous material to be playing around with, and it's not something that the average person should be tampering with. But the thing that I find fascinating about it is you can create its personality. You can match it to the kind of personality you'd like from your digital assistant, You can change where it's from. You can change the nationality of its voice. You can have it be either male or female. And the coolest part is, say, you're married, you have a couple of kids, and you have different preferences on, say, what your digital assistant should be like. The digital assistant will recognize who's talking to it or who is asking information, and it automatically defaults to their presets. So everybody can have what they want, even if you share a household with somebody.
Oh, that's incredible. So, I know this might be a sensitive topic, but you mentioned your family is in the future and you're stuck here in the year 2018. Could you elaborate on, so you have friends and family in the future?
Yes. Sorry, this is very emotional for me, but yes, I have. Sorry, I have friends and family in the future. My mother and father, they're about they're in the 60s now. With time travel, when you're traveling through time, you don't age. So even though I've spent hundreds of thousands of years in research, I'm still a young man. My family is my parents are in the late 60s. I have a big sister and a big brother, and I have two younger brothers. Thankfully, I'm not in a relationship. I don't have kids of my own. I feel terrible about not being with them. But it's even just being away from the family that I have is rough, and it's my driving force to get back home. And sure, I've catalogued terabytes and terabytes of data from this time period that would be useful for HQ, but that's not what I need to get back home. I need to see my family again. Are you helping provide for your family by doing this job? Do they give your family money? It's a very lucrative business, yes, and I don't age, but it takes time. It's not the same amount of time. Like, say I'm here for a couple hundred years, it might be a few weeks in the future time. But they do compensate my income for when I'm gone from my family. So I get paid a yearly salary, but if I'm not there, then that's a bit of an issue. So my family receives it wouldn't be my family, because I have brothers and sisters, and my parents, they all have jobs they can fend for myself. But say I had children and I had a family of my own, then they would receive the salary that I make ahead of time. It's kind of like an advance on your paycheck, but I don't know for how long I'm going to be gone. So it's just, rather than pay me every couple of weeks, the check goes to my family's account. Well, I see, James, I want to thank you for coming out with us here today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Would you be willing to do maybe a live stream in the future, or a lie detector test? Oh, definitely. If you guys all have questions, send them in. I obviously can't create too large a ripples, so some I can't talk about, or I know you like to keep this a family show, so I won't be answering questions with sensitive material in them. Okay, so guys, if you're watching this, leave a question down below in the comments that you have for James, and we'll try to address your comment in the next video. So again, I want to thank you for coming out here with us today. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Look forward to speaking with you too. What do you think? Is James Oliver an actual time traveler from the future? We would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. We have actually already filmed a lie detector test with James, and that will be up very soon. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming